True, we all need money. Simply because we've all agreed that we all need money. There's no other reason. It's important to understand this about money. A lot of people don't know it. Money is a measure of wealth. Money is not wealth. Money is like inches. Dollars, let's say, are like inches. They are a way of measuring real wealth, which consists of material resources plus energy plus intelligence. That's wealth. Money represents it. We used to have the idea, you see, that gold was money. Gold is wealth. Well, that's perfectly absurd, because does the prosperity of the world constantly depend on discovering new gold mines? When a banker buys gold, what does he pay for it with? Book entries. And so, with this myth of gold in the background, we think money is real. And money is the most unreal thing in the world. It's a form of statistics. And so, therefore, we don't realize that as our wealth increases as a result of an expanded technology, we have to provide enough money to circulate. In other words, we have to pay people for the work done on their behalf by machinery, because otherwise the manufacturer won't be able to move the goods off the shelf. Now that seems an outrageous idea, frankly in disaccord with the Protestant ethic. You mean give people money? Where's the money going to come from? Well, money never did come from anywhere. It's like asking, where do inches come from? It's simply a question of realizing that technology was invented to save labor. That doesn't mean in order to dismiss your employees. It means to let them have a vacation. In other words, a shorter work week. And for you yourself as the owner, less to do, so that you can go and gaze at the moon or make love to your lady friend. And why not do it? Well, everybody feels guilty about it. They think, having archaic minds, when we didn't have this technology, that they got to go on behaving the same way as when machines didn't exist. And now we have them. But we won't use them, except in silly ways. Like, for example, rushing around everywhere in automobiles, polluting the air. You know, you don't really have to commute in most businesses if you have a telephone. Ever thought about that? You don't need an office. You don't need to go rushing around, exhausting yourself and getting absolutely furious in the traffic jams on the freeway. You know, we're all getting furious about things we can do nothing about. You know, we read the newspapers and look at TV and see the disasters occurring all over the world. Feel upset and mad, and there's nothing we can do. Why waste your time? Pick up the telephone. It saves you the cost of a secretary. The fag of mailing stuff, sticking stamps on it, going down to the post office. And if you count up all the hours, you'll realize that the electronic method of communication, that is the technology, is much less expensive than the ordinary way one goes about things. It's like an automobile is a mechanical imitation of a horse and carriage. It's completely irrational. Long ago people have invented automobiles that are far more serviceable, but they somehow never get into use. So it is a matter of keeping your mind closely on what you really want to happen and what can be done, instead of going through meaningless rituals. Now, I was referring to the fact that everybody needs money. And while this is the system, while this is the social consensus, everybody doesn't need money. But while it is the social consensus that that's what we all need, let's be frank about it. And not say, therefore, the person whose interest is in higher things whether it be academic, religious, or artistic. Oh, you don't need money, because your satisfaction is surely in doing your work. The only people who need money are the people who are miserable at their work. Because they're there to make money. Let's drop the hypocrisy. The scholar, the artist, in this context where everybody has to have money to live, needs money just as much as everybody else and should be paid accordingly. This applies particularly to the teacher in the schools, or whatever, people who are put down saying, oh, you're a teacher, or you're a clergyman. You don't need money because you live on the Spirit. That's rubbish. I repeat, in this context, where everybody has to have it. So, you think you can be a dropout and be a hippie. You have to go out on the street and say, you've got any spare change? No, you don't need money. You're a hippie. Don't fool yourself. We all do. But we are living under conditions where money, as I have tried to explain, is not understood, where it is not seen for the fiction and the useful fiction which it is. And so what do? We have income tax, which is the most absurd system of accounting ever conceived. Yeah, have you ever figured out what it costs to pay income tax? Not just the tax itself, but the cost of paying it to yourself and to the government. It's colossal. And I raise the question then, why do it at all? Why doesn't the government simply take off the top as much money as it needs and issue the rest? It'd be much simpler. Oh, the silly business that torments everybody would be cancelled. And the Department of Internal Revenue and all its officers, they needn't be frightened of losing their jobs, because they could simply be the officials who work it the other direction. In other words, they could be the dispensers of the money to everybody to pay them for the amount of work done by machinery on their behalf. I mean, doesn't that make sense? What we've got against this is not, as it were, an intellectual or mathematical plot, but a psychological plot. And don't see that that is the inner meaning of technology, to save labor. In other words, you could say that the Labour Party in all the various countries has never really understood that it has to be saved. And it works against its own salvation with the ridiculous socialistic schemes of making everybody equally poor, which is what invariably happens, instead of making everybody equally rich. But of course, mind you, when we are all equally rich, there will always be people who want to outdo other people, and so feel psychologically that they're poor, even when they're in perfectly good health, very well fed, housed and clothed. We want to go a little bit beyond, so as to show, I'm more outstanding than you. And there, of course, we get into great metaphysical depths. But so far as the business of the matter is concerned, I think what I've said thus far should commend itself to your careful consideration.
your question.
I see society as more and more tending toward the usurping of my individual rights and freedoms as time goes by. What do you see as the ultimate end of this, i.e. either in democracy or socialism, and why do you think the individuals within the society are letting this happen to them?
Well, the last part of your question is the hardest one to answer. If we continue along the road we've been going on, of usurping more and more power to governmental officials to control our lives, I see only one end, and that's a loss of anything that has any meaning as democracy, a loss of human freedom, and a prison state. That's the end. Now, why are people letting this happen? That's a much more difficult question. And I think it is largely because of ignorance about where they are going. A lack of recognition. I don't believe they want to go this way. But I believe they are unwittingly letting themselves go down there. Because on each issue that comes up, people look at their separate special interests instead of the broader interests in governmental activity. Everybody wants to cut down government, provided that those things he has an interest in are maintained. I remember very well the summit conference in Washington on inflation that President Ford had about 2 or 3 years ago, in which one representative after another got up and said, in order to stop inflation, we have to cut the government budget. The way to cut the government budget is to spend more on my interests. That's how each separate group does it. So I think we are being driven down this road, fundamentally, by a defect in our political structure. A defect which allows each of these separate elements of government to be voted on separately, and never gets the citizen to look at the totality of it and see what the whole thing adds up. The solution is for people like you and me to talk to ourselves and to our fellows and to try to persuade our fellow men to be of like mind, to change the climate of opinion in these respects, to try to correct the political structure to impose it. I've been recently working on one particular proposal along those lines, which is to have constitutional amendments setting a maximum limit to the amount the government may spend. I won't go into the details, but I think fundamentally we are getting what the public at large is asking, and the public is asking for it, I believe, because they do not understand where it's going to lead them, because they are misinformed, and they are being led that way by the intellectual community, which has gone down a wrong road in my opinion. Now, I don't believe the case is hopeless. I believe there are many signs of change. There are many more people who recognize the problems with this road now than did 20 or 30 years ago. Experience is a wonderful teacher. So that I think you and I just have to keep on doing our little thing, trying to persuade our fellow men to be of like mind. Thank you. Let's take the next question.